Welcome back to SleeplessRonin Plays. I'm SleeplessRonin, and today we're going to be continuing with part 2 of ranking from Technical Readout 3067. What we're ranking today are going to be the vehicles. Yep, you heard me right. We're going to rank the Vs. Why? Because it's kind of a transition between the Inner Sphere mechs we've already ranked and the Clan mechs we'll rank next. Because we're going to rank all the vehicles. We're going to rank the Inner Sphere ones and the Clan ones because combined together, there are only 16 vehicles. It's not a huge pool to work from, so we're going to just do them all at once. Now, it also means that, once again, I'm going to try to rank the vehicle more into its role and purpose than just like, oh, well, this thing's got Clan ER large lasers. It's better than the Inner Sphere one that has ER large lasers. Now, we're going to try to get them more, overall goodness rating. What the role of the vehicle is. So, to that end, we're going to say that the top ranking, so if we look at the ranking guide, the top ranking is spectacular. It means it's going to excel in its role. Then we have amazing, which means it's going to be good in its role. It's going to be better than average, essentially. Then we're going to have basic, which means it's passable, but that's all. Craptastic means it's going to kind of fail at its role. And dreadful is it's just really, really failing at its role. So, with the ranking setup and the 16 vehicles shown right there, let's get this ball in the roll and start ranking them. So the first vehicle we have up is the Minion Advanced Tactical Vehicle. It's an interesting vehicle. This is our 20-tonner. It's a 20-ton hover tank. It moves at 914 with a fusion engine, which means it gets 10 free heat sinks, just like a battle mech would. When vehicles run ICE engines or internal combustion engines, I know it's ICE engine, whatever. They actually end up with no heat sinks. So this thing's just got a basic fusion engine, so it has 10 free heat sinks, which it does take advantage of because it carries 2 Inner Sphere medium pulse lasers. It has 88 points of armor, which is not insignificant since this thing has no turret. The armor is just covering 4 locations, which means it can withstand almost 2 Gauss rifle shells to the front of it. Not quite. They will penetrate on the second one, but this is a little 20-ton hover vehicle that can take a Gauss rifle shot and keep going on all sides. Even on the rear, it can take one on the rear and it's still not dead, which is pretty impressive. But the best part about it is it has a C3 slave, which really does mean it is an advanced tactical vehicle. You will get this thing out there because you're going to get those medium pulses within 6 hexes anyways to fire them, to give your other C3'd up members of your lance or company better targeting ranges, which you're going to want short ranges anyways. And this thing is fast enough to get up there and do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's a hover vehicle, so it's going to have some weaknesses, such as it can't traverse through forest and other kinds of crud like that. It's really easy to make it lose speed just by plinking it with missiles or anywhere and just like doing motive damage. So it does have that weakness, but overall, I think it's going to qualify as a pretty amazing little advanced tactical vehicle. This thing is a rangefinder for your C3 unit, and it does the job pretty well. Next up, the main Gauche light support tank. This tank is not so hot. It's a little 30-ton 4.6 tank with a fusion engine. So yay, 10 free heat sinks again, which is really messed up because it doesn't take advantage of those. Instead, what this rolling garbage can on wheels does is it mounts a light Gauss rifle. You've heard me complain about light Gauss rifles before. They're just not a good gun. I mean, seriously, since this thing has 10 free heat sinks, it can fire an ER large laser doing the same damage without any ammo or explosion potentials for less tonnage. ER large laser weighs 5 tons, 2 heat sinks is 7 tons. That's all you need. That is a lot less than the 13 tons it wastes on a light Gauss rifle. Light Gauss rifles are just garbage weapons. They got some hex distances over an ER large laser. But for what this thing's role is, that ER large laser fits the same bill. I mean, heck, for the tonnage on this thing, you could fit an ER PPC on there. That's 7 tons for the ER PPC, plus 5 more heat sinks. That's 12 tons. You still have a ton to spare for the light Gauss rifle, and it's going to do more damage and nearly reach the same distance. This thing this is just raw, stinking garbage. If you can't find the tonnage to mount a real Gauss rifle, a full-size Gauss rifle, stop playing with the lights. You can find a better gun that's going to fit in most things and be more effective. So I'm sorry, the main Gauche is a dreadful vehicle. It's not worth it. Okay, admittedly, I guess there's a minor bit of worth because it's like going to have no battle value cost at all. But that's it. It's super dinky for essentially a 8-point plank at long ranges. That's cheap in the battle value. That's all it has for it. Literally it. It doesn't even have as good armor as the hover tank that weighed 10 tons less. I'm leaving it in dreadful. Next up, we have the Stygian strike tank. This is a 40-ton. We're jumping through the tonnages really fast. Because remember, we don't have a lot of vehicles in here. And since we're doing the industrial ones first, we're going bum, 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 bum. We're just going through the tonnages real quick. This is a 40-ton hover tank with a fusion engine. So it's got those 10 free heat sinks again. And it goes 914. So the same speed as our prior hover tank. So really speedy. This one actually has worse armor because it has a turret. So it has the exact same amount of armor as is found in the Minion, but because it adds a 5th location, everything has less armor on it. That's just doesn't turn out to be very good. It means it's much lower protection on all sides except for the rear. And what does it get for the extra 20 tons? It has 2 ER medium lasers, so it takes advantage of those heat sinks, and an LRM-15 rack. It's a strike tank, and it's kind of striky. But it seems very basic. It's not, honestly, super great. It's not terrible, but it's really not super great. With its speed, I think I'd probably prefer Streak SRMs or MRMs or something. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't make me thrilled. It doesn't make me depressed. So it is pretty much your definition of a basic tank. Next up, we have the 45-ton wheeled, our first wheeled vehicle, Glaive medium tank. This one also mounts a fusion engine. It moves slower. Moves at a 5/8 speed. It has 12 heat sinks, 10 from the engine and 2 added on. And it has the exact same armor value as both the Minion and the Stygian. Which means we're still not doing very good for protection. It divides it up a little bit differently, but since it has a turret, it's also kind of lightly armored. But this thing is got an interesting. It's a sniper tank. Let's be very straight up for this on this tank. Its primary guns are an ER large laser and a turret, with a pair of machine guns on that same turret, which just seems weird to me. I don't know why you'd mount your anti-personnel weapons on the same thing as your main battle cannon, but okay. And then it has a LRM-15 with Artemis. It's not. Again, this one doesn't make me go yay. It doesn't make me go. Buh. It's not a bad sniper. It's a pretty solid sniper. It's very basic. Downfall being for a sniper tank, it doesn't have tracks, so it can't get into all the places that a tracked tank can go. So I'm gonna have to stick this as basic again. It's pretty much a basic vehicle. I'm not gonna go hooray. I'm not gonna go boo. All right, going through the tanks pretty fast. That's kind of nice. So we'll have a relatively short video for once, I think. Next up, we have the Musketeer hover tank. This is a 50-ton hover tank, which I do believe is the maximum weight of hover vehicles. It's got a 711 ICE engine, so really cheap in the cost. No spare heat sinks, but it doesn't need that because it's not going to carry energy-based weaponry. What this thing has is it has significantly more armor than anything we've seen beforehand, nearly double what we've seen previous things carry. This thing's 134 points versus the 88 we've been seeing consistently through the things. I know it's not quite double. I said nearly double. It's more like, whatever. It's much improved. It has a turret, so its armor spread is still divided amongst 5 locations, but now it can weather a Gauss rifle, almost 2 Gauss rifle shells on every single location, so it's pretty solid. But what makes this thing fantastic is what it mounts for weaponry. What it mounts for weapons are 2 Streak SRM2s. Meh, take them or leave them. But in addition to those 2 Streak SRM2s, what it mounts is a single rotary autocannon 5 with 60 rounds of ammo. That is enough for 12 rounds of shooting at 5 shells a round. This thing is fantastically fun. This is one of my favorite hover tanks in the game because it's gun. I just love rotary autocannon 5s. They are hilarious. And this thing looks like essentially it's got a big freaking rotary Gatling cannon on top of this thing, like a big old pistol-mounted barrel nose. It's just kind of cool looking. This is going to go into the amazing category because, again, you can always appeal to me by putting a rotary autocannon 5 on something. I'm thrilled by those. I love those guns. Next up, we have the Morningstar City Command Vehicle. That's an interesting concept. We're looking for a command vehicle for this one. And this one is going to be a successful command vehicle. I can tell you that right now. What does it mount? Well, sorry, let's go back. It runs a 280 XL Fusion engine. So this is not a cheap vehicle. This one costs C-bills to roll out on the battlefield. For many reasons. It's wheeled, so it's going to have the limitations of terrain that you'll find with wheels and hover and stuff like that. So not as mobile, or not more speedy, but less accessible than a tracked vehicle. It has 144 points of armor spread around 5 locations, so it has a turret on it. Again, most locations can take 2 Gauche rifle hits and not puncture, or just barely puncture. So it's got some protection. What it mounts for weaponry is autocannon 10 in the turret, a basic original plain autocannon 10. So you can take advantage of special munitions with this one. It's got 20 shells of 2 tons of ammo for 20 shells, which is more than enough. There's got a bevy of machine guns scattered around the vehicle, which is good for city fighting. You want to fight off the infantry that be coming at you. It's got enough cargo space, 4 tons of it, to carry an inner sphere battle armor squad or an infantry unit of its own for protection, which is also good. But then then it has even more electronic fun of a targeting computer, so it's got really good accuracy with that AC-10. So mount some of those special ammunitions. Go ahead. That's going to be a lot of fun. Those machine guns are going to be oddly accurate too. But what it has in addition to all of that is it has a C3 master computer. This is a low BV because it's got basic autocannons, basic machine guns. The XL engine is just an XL engine on a tank. It's not like it's huge. And it's got well armored, but it's not super fast. This thing's at low BV for a master computer. That's really, really solid for your Lance or company. You need something to run the company controls, but for the Lance, this thing is a really solid master computer choice because it's low BV, so you'll be adding less BV amongst every unit in the Lance. So that's a positive. That's a real positive. You can get bigger things alongside of it then. So I am going to say that this is going to run in the spectacular category because it's hard to get a cheaper battle value wise command vehicle. Now, C-bill wise, you will be spending the money. C-bill wise. But I still think it's going to be spectacular because, yeah, there's your command vehicle. You can have some battle armor to protect it as well. And it can just, go to town and be awesome. And since it's a vehicle, you can park it up next to like level 1 things and they can't be seen. So, yeah, even better. Hide it. Hide it as your computer. So, yeah, I'm going to put that in spectacular. I like it a lot. Next up, we have the Manteuffel attack tank. It's an inner sphere omni tank. Interesting. It's 70 tons with a 350 XL engine in it. So it moves at 5.8 for a tracked vehicle. This thing is really putting out the C-bill cost. It's got 206 points of armor, so it is well protected. This thing can take more than 2 Gauche rifle shells to every side but the rear. And it's going to carry some interesting loadouts. Our first loadout is got an ECM system, a C3 slave, so it pairs up both that Morningstar, a Rack 5 and 3 ER medium lasers. It mounts a few extra heat sinks to cover the ER mediums, but still, it is a good assault tank, essentially, or attack tank, with a lot of damage output right there. And this moves at 5.8, so it's actually able to traverse across the field at a pretty good clip for 70 tons. Alt Config A is a wonderful way to bring in Ultra AC-20 at a good clip towards the enemy. It also has a C3 slave, so once again, you're able to link up and really have some fun with that Ultra AC-20. Oh, my minion's up there at 3 hexes. My Ultra AC-20 at maximum range is now short range to shoot you. Yeah, I'll enjoy that a little bit. 25 shells of ammo for the Ultra 22, so this thing can always double tap without fear of running out of ammo in an average battle. That's also really good. It has 2 basic medium lasers and an ER small laser to back up the Ultra 20, but the thing, it's really about scaring people with the Ultra 20 on this pretty good speed tank. The last version, or the last variant, or configuration, sorry, sadly does not have a C3 slave, but in its place it does mount a heavy Gauss rifle. So, yeah, again, this thing carries either a lot of weapons that do 5 points of damage a lot of time, or it carries guns that have big hole punchers, which, you know, it's a FedCom vehicle that was actually produced at FedCom, so it's LAAF and AFFC. So, it, you know, big bore autocannons, Gauss rifles, Rack 5s. They like those things, which is why this tank has got all of them in a variant for it. So, in addition to the heavy Gauss rifle, though, it does mount an ER small laser and a medium laser. Not an ER medium, just a plain old basic medium laser. And it does carry 16 rounds of ammo, or 4 tons of ammo, for the heavy Gauss rifle, so it's able to output some significant damage. With a pretty good armor factor, yeah, I like this thing a lot. This is going to be a spectacular tank. For one thing, it's an Inner Omni tank, and you don't see a lot of those, so it's got a really nice distinction to that. And it's also got, all the variants are a lot of fun on it. I like that tank. It's got durability, speed, and guns for an attack tank. It does its job. It attacks. Next up, we have the Fortune wheeled assault vehicle. This one's a Lyran tank for the most part, and it's wheeled, so it's got that. It's only got a fusion engine, which is fine. It doesn't need the heat sinks anyways. It's just the fusion saves weight over an ice engine. It weighs 8 tons. It is an assault vehicle. This is an assault class vehicle. It only moves at 3.5, which is unfortunately pretty slow. It has 224 points of armor, so even more armor than the Manteuffel. But what really sells this thing is it has a turret-mounted pair of LB-20X autocannons with 40 rounds of ammunition. That is plenty enough for as much cluster or as much solid as you want to carry in both varieties. In fact, I dropped like a ton or 2 out of there and put in some like backup ER mediums or something like that, just for some extra defense on this thing. Because it is not speedy. This thing will have some trouble closing with the enemy unless it's able to take advantage of cover, city streets. I mean, honestly, this would be a really good city fighting vehicle. So, yeah. Now, I think it's pretty cool overall. It's very, very Lyran in design. I'm going to rank this thing as an amazing vehicle. I just don't think it's quite as spectacular as the other ones. Although it is a very scary vehicle that does create a very large bubble of, oh, don't get near me. Unfortunately, when it does become immobilized or loses all of its speed due to motive criticals, it will be essentially just a zone of control vehicle, or zone of control turret at that point in time. Because, yeah, it's slow is the biggest issue. What pulls it down from honestly being a spectacular vehicle to just amazing is its speed. Next up, we have the Glory Heavy Fire Support Vehicle. This is the opposite side, or not the opposite side, the opposite side of the Civil War. This is the AFFC, Federated Sons vehicle. This is a 85-tonner. It is tracked, and it moves at 3.5 also. So, another slow vehicle. It has even more armor, running at 251 points, meaning that every location, including the rear, can withstand multiple Gauss rifle shells. In fact, the front and the turret can take 4 Gauss rifle shells before they're penetrated, which is a lot of armor in one location. That is very bulky. It is got my favorite gun in the game on it. It mounts a rotary autocannon 5, paired up with 2 LRM-15s with Artemis 4, and it has 2 ER medium lasers at the front of it and an ECM in the body. Well, that's all good stuff. The biggest problem is it only has 40 shells of rotary autocannon 5, which means as far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit under ammoed. It's got 32 rounds of LRM ammo, which is more than you need, but only has 40 rounds of Rack 5, which is less than you need. So I'd have pulled 1 ton of Artemis LRM-15 ammo and replaced that with 1 ton of Rack 5 ammo. That would have been my preferred loadout on it, which is that plus its speed is why this is only going to be an amazing vehicle. but yeah, it should be better, but it's not. We have one remaining inner sphere vehicle to cover before we get to the clan vehicles. So there aren't a huge number of clan vehicles, but there are still some. So the last one is our 90-ton assault tank called the Ajax. This one is another AFFC tank, and it's also an Omni tank. The Ajax has 3 configurations. Oh, sorry, it's got a 270 XL Fusion engine, so once again, this is a very costly tank. It's going to cost C-bills. It's a 3.5 90-tonner. It's got 304 points of armor. So it's got the maximum armor you could put on a mech at 100 tons, but this is a 90-ton tank. So yeah, it's got a lot of armor. The front has 76 points alone. The front has more armor than an entire Locust strapped to the thing. It's crazy. It's got almost as much armor as the Minion has all total on the front alone. So yeah, it's hard to punch the armor of this thing. You take it out via criticals and motive criticals. That's how you shut this thing down. So what does it have? In the primary configuration, it has an Ultra AC-10 paired to a Gauss rifle with 2 medium pulse lasers, a Streak SRM-4, and a C3 Slave. So again, it works very well with the Morningstar or any other command mech or vehicle with a C3 Master. That's awesome. Now the fun thing is, one of the B variant of the Ajax itself does have a master computer. So multiple Ajaxes, all Ajaxes have either a master or a slave. So a lance of Ajaxes can completely communicate with its lance, which is pretty sweet. The Alt Config A is a triple rotary autocannon 5 loadout with 180 rounds of ammo, so exactly the right amount of ammo. An ER small laser, a Guardian ECM to counter ECM. Mainly I see that thing running as ECCM mode to counter ECM that's trying to block it from having its C3 connectivity, and a C3 Slave. So I like that version a whole lot. That's a lot of racks to throw downfield. It's very disturbing. The last version is the command variant, which is the B version, and it has a PPC, 3 LRM-15 racks with Artemis 4. It's actually perfect, because the command one can then sit further back and be pelting things at long distance using the improved targeting modifiers, or improved range modifiers, improved hex ranges, from whatever's up closer to the enemy. So yeah, I really like that a lot. That to me is really kind of cool, and yeah, that means that thing's amazing. And there's not a problem. Every one of these versions of the Ajax is spectacular. It's fantastic all the way around. Okay, we're gonna move on to the clan vehicles. The fun thing is, once again, the clan vehicles are all named after various gods or whatever. Even though actually the Ajax also feels like it's named after, you know, a hero as well. So okay. So the first clan vehicle is the Hephaestus Scout Tank. It's an Omni tank built by the clans. I do believe this one is a Hell's Horses tank. And yeah, so Hephaestus is the Greek god of blacksmiths, if you didn't know, carpenters and artisans. Also fires and volcanoes, which is why his Roman counterpart is Vulcan. Hephaestus is the son of Zeus and Hera. He was cast from Olympus for being lame. You know, he had the limp in the leg kind of thing. And he had a massive workshop with like bellows that magically worked on their own, and like this massive anvil or whatever. And he crafted like maybe not all, but a lot of the armor and arms for the gods, the Greek gods. He was also married to Aphrodite up until he discovered that she was having an affair with Ares. So yeah, he had some issues. He was in a video game I played not too long ago. The Greek open world one where you had like Phoenix Rising or whatever, like that. Yeah, we had like get all the Greek gods and find them because they'd all been like shamed by something else. It was actually an interesting game. Yeah, anyways, that's the name where this tank gets its background from. So let's look at this forge-worthy tank, which is such an odd name for a little 30-ton hover tank. I mean, Hephaestus seems like something that should be much more. I don't actually know. Much more beefy, maybe. I don't know. It's got a 110 fusion engine, so it moves at 812, so not as fast as the inner sphere hover tanks for the most part that we saw. It does have more armor. It's got 96 points of armor. But it is spreading that around 5 locations, so it does have a turret on this thing. The interesting thing is it has a fixed loadout of an active probe and 4 tons of cargo infantry, which is enough to carry a clan infantry point, but not enough to carry a point of elementals, which to me seems like a major oversight. It is a scout tank, so you do want the active probe in there, but, you know, take a ton out of the rest of your configurations and give it that extra ton for a point of elementals. It'd be better off that way. The primary configuration mounts 2 medium pulse lasers, a tag, and an ECM suite. Yay, it's an electronics thing. I don't understand the point of the tag too much, because again, these are clans. Clans and an arrow for artillery always feel like such a contradiction. So there you go. There's the 1 ton in this variant I'd have yanked out of that configuration for an extra ton for elementals. Let's look at alt config A. Alt config A is LRM 15s with Artemis 4 and ER small laser and only 8 tons of ammo, or 8 rounds of ammo. Well, I don't like that config at all anyways. It's got a 15 rack, which is one of the better racks, but then it matches it with an Artemis 4, so it has only 8 rounds of ammo. It's not enough ammo, in my opinion. No. Where I had to fix this thing is I ripped off the Artemis 4, stuck 3 LRM-5s on this thing, and plenty of ammo, and probably ripped out the ER small laser and made sure that free ton for the upgrading the infantry from 4 tons to 5 so it can carry a point of elementals. I'm just not a big fan of that. Alt config A seems kind of like garbage to me. Alt config B is better. Alt config B has 2 ER medium lasers and a Streak SRM-6 rack with 1 ton of ammo. That's a good configuration. That's very lethal at 12 hexes or less range. It's pretty good damaging at 15 hexes of range, so it's a pretty solid variant. It's also one of the higher battle value variants. I mean, the alt config A is very low battle value comparatively. And alt config C is an odd one because it mounts 2 ATM-3s with 3 tons of ammo. That's plenty of ammo to be able to carry everything from HE through ER missiles right there, so it's just fine, but ATM-3s? Really? I mean, compare that to the B variant and you go, no. And the worst part is, that C variant is by far the lowest battle value one. It's not a great variant at all. It's, man. Honestly, this tank probably falls into the, is it basic or craptastic? It's just, it's lacking. It's a scout tank, though. It's a scout tank, and it does have the active probe, so we're going to stick into basic. It's a basic scout tank. It does its job, but what it's trying to do beyond its job, it's just not there for it. I mean, honestly, it should be faster as a scout tank also, but I'll forgive that because it does try to have some guns, but it doesn't really win at any of those things. Especially not the ATM-3 one or the LRM-15 one. Both those are just terrible variants. Next up, we have the Tyr Infantry Support Tank. Tyr is a Norse Aesir, patron of warriors and heroes. He sacrificed his wolf to the he sacrificed his hand to the wolf Fenrir. And Tyr is the person that we get, or the mythological person we get Tuesday from. The Norse word Tyrsdagar, or Day of Tyr. So, Tuesday, Tyr's Day. You got it, right? Cool, huh? Good enough. Anyways, let's look at this tank. This is a Ghost Bear tank, or Rasselhag Dominion, or Ghost Bear Dominion, or whatever tank. It's that whole smushy conglomeration there, which explains the Norse name, because there's that whole Norse influence in Rasselhag kind of thing. Okay, so what do we got? It's a 45-ton hover tank from the clans. It's got a 170 rated fusion engine, so it moves at 914, so it's faster than the scout tank. It's faster than our scout tank. Really? Okay. 104 points of armor. That's pretty good. It's got a turret, but everything is pretty evenly spread on this thing. Almost every side has the same amount of armor on it, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it does look like a box, so a box that has the same armor on every side kind of makes some sense. It has a turret. it has 2 extra heat sinks because this thing does mount an ER large laser. And that's a clan ER large laser, so 25 hexes of 10 damage is pretty solid. It also mounts 2 Streak SRM4s for closer in things, although remember clan Streaks go up to 12 hexes, so by closer in I mean still longer than an industry medium laser. And then it has what's very important for this thing. This is an infantry support tank, right? Well, it carries 5 tons of infantry cargo bay. That's enough for a point of freaking elementals. That is exactly what it needs to be. It's fast. It gets the elementals up to the battle lines real well because it's got armor to handle it and it's got the speed to get up there. Plus, it's got guns that are scary enough to mech. So, yeah, for 45 tons, this thing is really good at its job. I mean, I actually think I'm going to say this is a spectacular tank for its job of getting a point of elementals to the battlefield intact, ready to go, and still be able to fight, and it can fight too. Yeah, this thing does its job very well. Spectacularly well, I'd say. Next up, we have the Enyo strike tank. Enyo is a Greek goddess of war, saying the EV is kind of like, it never works out. Sometimes referred to as the sister of war. Sometimes also confused with Eris. Greek gods kind of get some messiness to them because of how the stories are told and embellished and stuff like that. She is potentially the embodiment of strife and discord, and her father might be Ares, and she would sometimes join him in battle, and she really liked to destroy cities when she did that. Sometimes referred to as this, again, I'm qualifying all these statements because one of the more confusing Greek pantheon kind of things. Sometimes she was referred to as supreme in war. She would also sometimes fight alongside her siblings, Eris, Phobos, and Deimos. Like, remember, she was sometimes referred to. She sometimes was confused with Eris, but sometimes would fight alongside Eris. Greek mythology at times can be very confusing. But, you know, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of weird. At least Phobos, Deimos are recognizable, and Eris is there too. And we just got the Eris battle mech. I mean, it just came out. I haven't built mine yet, but I got him in. But that's a Free Worlds League mech, so it's not related to the tank at all. Sometimes Greek mythology gets very confusing and very muddled. Anyways, let's look at this tank. It's a 55-ton tracked tank with an XL fusion engine, so it moves at 6'9", so it's got some good speed on a tracked tank. It only has 144 points of armor, which is a little bit, it could be more heavily armored, but it's not bad at all. It can almost withstand 2 Gauss rifle shells on any direction. Almost, but not quite. It can from the front, but nowhere else. And what does it have? Well, it has a large pulse laser. Well, that's already good. It's clan large pulse lasers. They're disturbing and disgusting weapons. It has a triumvirate of Streak SRM6s. And then a pair of machine guns. Okay, there is nothing wrong with this thing at all. I think the most wrong thing is the fact that 2 of those Streak SRM6s are stuck in the front arc only and not mounted on the turret like one of them is. You have the large pulse and 1 SRM6 on the turret. The machine guns are on the sides, and then the 2 Streak SRM6s otherwise are in the front. So it's a little bit weird on the layout, but overall it's a really solid strike tank. I mean, this thing can get up there, hit hard, and hit accurately. So that's really honest. It's a pretty amazing tank, I'm going to say. Pretty amazing tank. Next up, we have the Shoden Assault Vehicle. The Shoden Assault Vehicle actually kind of drove me nuts trying to figure out what deity thing this was referring to. I mean, I didn't recognize it off the bat, and I'm pretty good at deciphering my Japanese, and it's just a bit annoying. And so I'm trying to figure this thing out. Well, after reading the blurb in the TRO, I still thought to be off. It said the Japanese mythological elephant god of wisdom. Okay. Let's, that's, Buddhist practitioners. That's Ganesh. That's okay. Let's find out how that's related to Japan. I started digging in some of that, and Yeah, so I had heard of this god, but not under the name Shoden. I heard of his Kangitan. So, yeah, that's not the name I came up with originally. Even more so, you might actually have heard it as Shoten, not Shoden. It's same characters, just a different pronunciation on there. Kind of like you have Kami, but you put it like you go Amagami. So it's the same character. Kami and Gami are the same character. Yeah, and even yeah, when you cut the kanji apart, it kind of literally means holy heaven or sacred being or whatever, or sacred god. It's holy one. It's all kind of a weird. This one actually drove me a bit nuts, and I felt exhausted by the time I was done, like trying to dig up the name. So, bleh on that one. Let's just dig into the vehicle then. It's a 70-ton wheeled clan tank. It's designed Nova Cat Draconis combined, kind of feel good cooperation-y sort of thing going on. It moves at 4.6. It's got a fusion engine. It's got 184 points of armor, so it's actually pretty well armored around most locations. And then it's got a very strange group of weapons. It's got 4 light machine guns with 100 rounds of ammo, or 200 rounds of ammo, so 1 ton of ammo. And then it has 3 ATM-9s with 9 tons of ammo, so plenty of ability to load out the different variations of ammo. Honestly, I like the ATMs in this thing because it has enough of them to actually become lethal, especially at close range. I don't like the machine guns because it's got the fusion engine heat sinks can be taking advantage of. I put 2 ER medium lasers instead of the 4 light machine guns on this thing, just so it has a couple of direct fire blaps to go along with the massive missile barrage that's firing downrange. That's just me. It's wheeled, so it's more limited. Its machine guns are scattered all over the location. There's 2 in the front and 1 on each side. It's, I don't know, doesn't thrill me, doesn't make me feel awful. It's kind of a very basic tank. I mean, maybe that's what they're going for. The Draconis Nova Cat combination, something that's acceptable, that's usable. Yeah, good enough. Not thrilling. Next up, we have the Morrigu Fire Support Vehicle. This one is Irish mythology. Morrigu, aka Morrigan, Great Queen, Phantom Queen kind of thing. Connected to war and fate, especially when the fate deals with doom and death and battle victory. She related to the image of the crow, so that's kind of cool. And sometimes interestingly referred to as a trio of sisters called the Morrigana. Or Morrigna, I think. It's kind of interesting. I mean, sure, it's kind of cool. I mean, Irish mythology is pretty cool to see in this, so yeah, it's nice. This is a assault tank. It's 80 tons. It's got a fusion engine, so it moves at 3.5 and it's tracked, so kind of averagey there. Only 208 points of armor for an 80-tonner though, so it's a little bit light in the armor. It's not terrible. I mean, honestly, its armor is still easily pretty solid. I mean, we're looking at where it can withstand 2 Gauss rifle shells to every location except for the rear, and the front can weather 4 Gauss rifle shells. I love measuring things in Gauss rifle shells. It's just easy to do. Everybody knows I'm saying 15 points of damage at once. I can say 4 Gauss rifle shells into the front, and you still have armor. What does it have for guns? Well, most of the weapons are pretty good. It's got 2 Clan ER large lasers in the turret, alongside 2 LRM-15. So long range attack. That's pretty good. And this is a fire support vehicle. So this is actually what it's doing. It supports with long range fire. It has an ECM system, which is good for protecting itself. But then it derpily has a pair of SRM-2s. 1 on each side. I mean, you don't hear me arguing for machine guns very often, but in this case, I would have gone with machine guns over the SRM-2s. Because I could have gotten 4 light machine guns and the ammo for the SRM-2s, and I would have felt better protected against infantry. I'd have put 1 in every direction. 1 rear, 1 front, 1 on each side, and I'd have felt like secured against infantry then. with the machine guns. You're going to not hear me argue for those machine guns very often, but I would have in this case over the SRM2s, which honestly don't seem like they serve much of a purpose except for to justify the bizarre little cockpit hatch double missile tube thing on the side of it. They're just a strange weapon to have on this thing. As a fire support tank, it's a very strange weapon. Which is why it's not reason. It's an amazing tank. Let's just admit it's an amazing tank because the ER larges with the LRM-15s. It's an amazing tank. Next up, we have the last tank we're going to be discussing today, the Heimdall ground monitor tank. This is an Omni tank, but only has 2 versions, and it also mounts the vast majority of its guns. Nearly are permanently fixed on this tank, so that's also strange. This is a 95 tonner. Oh, sorry, it's Heimdall. We all know who Heimdall is, right? We've all watched the MCU. Well, that's close enough. He was the Norse god who watched for invaders from Himmelbjorg, the place where the Rainbow Bridge of Bifrost would touch the sky. He's got great eyesight and hearing, and he has foreknowledge, and that's Heimdall. Norse god. Cool. Played by Idris Elba. Also cool. So what's this thing have? 95 tons, has an XL Fusion engine, moves at 3.5. It's got 352 points of armor. This thing has more than a century's worth of armor on the front. That is durable and crazy. And it still moves at 3.5. This thing's got a third of an Atlas strapped to the front of it. Disgusting. It has fixed equipment, and the fixed equipment is a pair of LB-10Xs with 30 rounds of ammo, which is honestly enough ammo. And their biggest problem is they're front firing only, but that's okay. It's still a freaking huge amount of guns permanently fixed in the thing. Primary configuration has a heavy large laser paired to 3 Streak SRM4s and adds 8 extra heat sinks. The biggest issue is it has way too much streak ammo. It has 3 tons of streak ammo for those SRM4s. That's 75 rounds. That's 25 shots per launcher. That's way too much ammo. I mean, Clan ECMs only weigh 1 ton. So rip out a ton of ammo to stick in an ECM would have probably been a better thing to do. Alt config A pairs up 2 ATM-12s and a heavy medium laser. I like the ATM-12s well enough. I do not think the heavy medium is necessarily useful in there, but sure, why not? It's your only point defense gun at that point in time. Honestly, what makes this truly an amazing tank, and it's only going to be an amazing tank, is the amount of armor this thing carries is truly disgusting. Its guns are good. Its armor is frightening because it's just so hard to cut through that much armor on this thing. Even coming in at the rear, it can take more than 3 Gauss rifle shells to the back of this tank to penetrate it. That is not an easy vehicle to bring down at all. It is durable. I mean, even if you immobilize this stupid thing or get it to 0 movement points or whatever, it's still kind of a threat on the battlefield because of the turret-mounted weaponry. And you can't wander in the front of it because the LB-10s. So, yeah, it's a disturbing little vehicle. Just for the firepower, for the armor it carries. The firepower is really good also, but it's not spectacular because of a couple of small issues, but it is an amazing vehicle. And we've now come to the end of the vehicles video. That is Clan and Innersphere vehicles from TRO 3067. We had nothing that was craptastic and only 1 dreadful vehicle, which is honestly really good. Most of the vehicles are pretty amazing. There's a very solid core of vehicles in this book. And what I think is the most interesting part, though, is 3 of the Innersphere vehicles are spectacular, and only 1 of the Clan vehicles is spectacular in its role. But then it's clans. Clans and vehicles just still do not always mix too well. They're just so relegated in the clans. Even though some of the clans like Hell's Horses do use them a lot, and other clans like Novacat and Ghost Bear to try to use them more effectively and mix them in because they appeal to the Innersphere populations they're dealing with. So there is a push for the clanners to have better vehicles, but they're still just not going to be like the Innersphere who are good at vehicles. Comparatively, they're their place the industry does shine at in general is vehicle design. So yeah, and they showed it off here with some spectacular vehicles. I mean, we got a command vehicle spectacular, and 2 assault vehicles, which are also very spectacular in their roles. So good on the Innersphere for really winning this one in some ways. And we've come to the end of the vehicles video. If you've enjoyed this video, please do the YouTube things of hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. It'll help me out. I just recently crossed 1,000 subscribers, so I'm very happy right now. Yay! And with that, we're going to throw some videos up on the screen so you can watch something else of mine if you'd like to. And then in a few seconds, we'll have some sword noises and the video will end. So I'll end here and say, sayonara. We'll catch you next time.